Viruses cannot bridge the gap between non-life and life. An atheist asked, "How do you account for RNA viruses bridging the gap between non-life and life?"
Our response is below. 1.
Viruses cannot, and do not, bridge the gap between chemicals and life. 2. To claim that viruses bridge the gap between life and non-life is like claiming that the moon bridges the gap between the Earth and the Sun. It does not.
3. There is an enormous uncrossable chasm between chemicals and the simplest self-replicator, needed for first life. 4. There is an enormous uncrossable chasm between RNA viruses and the simplest living cell. Details.
1. My take is that beneficial viruses and living cells were both created by God. Viruses play essential roles in the biosphere, to keep bacteria in check, for instance. 2. However, from a purely naturalistic viewpoint, the most likely origin of viruses is that they are transposable genetic elements that escaped living cells. So, living cells arose first, and viruses arose from them, rather than the other way around, since viruses do not have the machinery needed to create protein capsids to protect their genetic material, and they do not have the machinery needed to replicate themselves. Quote, viruses also do not possess the necessary machinery for translation. They do not possess ribosomes and cannot independently form proteins from molecules of messenger RNA. Because of these limitations, viruses can replicate only within a living host cell, nature.
3. The simplest living cell is orders of magnitude more complex than the simplest virus.
The simplest living cell has 473 to 490 genes. These genes are required for the basic processes of life. This results in a genome that is 543,000 NT long, with 452 protein coding genes, and 38 RNA coding genes. Each gene is 1100 NT long. The simplest RNA virus has a genome of 7,400 NT, and 4 genes. This is far short of the functional requirements for the simplest life. So, the genetic difference between the simplest RNA virus and the simplest living cell is 530 kilobytes minus 7.4 kilobytes. That is 535,000 base pairs, or 473 minus 4, that is 469 genes.
4. High specificity genes, needed for life essential processes, have information specificity of 1 part in 10 to the power of 60.
So, to move from the simplest RNA virus to the simplest living cell, we need to generate 469 new genes worth of biofunctional information. So, the coding gene specificity information, for the new genes to move from simplest virus to simplest living cell, is 1 part in 10 to the power of 60 to the power 469. That is, 1 part in 10 to the power of 28,140.
5.
The universe has random chance material resources for 10 to the power of 120 chemical trials in its entire 14 billion year history, to try to find a functional gene. So, the universe simply does not have the material and time resources to create the genes for the simplest living cell. 6. Distance to the moon is 239,000 miles. Distance to the sun is 92 million miles. So, the sun is 385 times further from the Earth than the moon. In contrast, the coding gene specificity information content of the simplest living cell is 10 to the power of 28,140 times greater than the coding gene specificity information content of the simplest virus. So, in terms of coding gene specificity information content, the distance between the simplest living cell and the simplest virus is many orders of magnitude greater than the Earth-Sun versus Earth-Moon distance.
Conclusion.
1. To claim that viruses bridge the gap between life and non-life is like claiming that the moon bridges the gap between the Earth and the Sun. It does not.
2. In fact, the virus-to-cell informational distance, in specificity information, is much greater than the distance, in miles, between the Earth and the Sun.
Thanks to Harry Heathen for the question. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.